When you need something hearty to fuel you up fast, grab a can of Campbell's Chunky Soup. Packed with big chunks of meat and vegetables, and now in 50 flavors. Campbell's Chunky Soup, the hearty way to fuel your game. Find your flavor at Chunky.com. Number 1 ranked Alabama heads to Death Valley for a huge SEC showdown against LSU.
Snap, fumble, Alabama's got the football.
Coverage begins Saturday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Because the parade, Golick, is today.
The parade is today. Listen, I know the parade's going to be great. It wasn't too long ago that, Cleveland had their own parade. See how I just keep bringing it back to that?
City of Champions.
Well, of course
City
it
of
is.
Champions.
We just didn't want to hog them all,
See, you guys are givers.
We are givers.
You guys are givers.
Gave that away. No, really, it's going to – there are parades for champions, and then there are parades for champions. Mm-hmm. This is going to be in about the biggest upper echelon category you can have, right?
This is going to be the least productive day in the history of business.
Man, and that's cool. And we talked about it yesterday, and we actually got a tweet from someone who said their kid yesterday had 2 tests at school.
Yeah.
How ridiculous is that?
That's cruel and unusual.
It's crazy.
Which, by the way, is protected by the Constitution. That should not have happened.
That's exactly right.
Should not have happened.
As soon as you saw it was going to be a Game 7, every school should have said canceled out Thursday and Friday. Thursday because you're staying up late to watch the game, and Friday because, you have the parade.
And by the way, Schwarber will join us. Kyle Schwarber comes out.
Schwarber.
As you said, he might be pre-gaming. I think he'll be in full game.
Good for him.
It'll be game.
I mean, just about all the guys on this team, they're like 3 years removed of having a team meeting at Chuck E. Cheese.
Also true. They are a young bunch.
6 starters again on this crew that are 24 or younger. So the parade starts at 10 Central, 11 Eastern. It starts at Wrigley. And it moves along, Michigan Ave to Oak to Ohio Streets. Then it moves to Columbus Drive from Monroe Street to Balboa Drive. And then I think a rally was at noon their time, so 1 o'clock Eastern.
I think time will cease to matter.
Just for the people to know when to get where you need to get.
Yeah, I think in Chicago time has stopped.
The rally
for a long
take place
time
at Lower Hutchinson Field at noon Central Time, Chicago time. So, listen, people have a ball. I mean, the play. I love how they say too that when they have out there. There are 3 parts. The 3 parts I mentioned where they would like people to go, where the vehicles carrying the team will be proceeding slowly at, quote, it's in quotes,
correct,
parade speed. Well, what else are they going to do? Go zipping by? They putting in like Formula One cars?
Hey, 108 years, see you.
Yeah, they're each in Formula One
quick,
cars.
Quick, take a look, Frank.
I mean, at parade speed. This is a parade. This is a championship parade. Did you really feel the need to put parade speed?
This should be at like century-long parade speed, okay? This should be like blue hair alert, okay? Behind the wheel, you're going this slow.
You know who else should be in this parade?
Yes.
Ferris Bueller.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
You know who else should be in this parade?
Who?
Steve Bartman.
Steve Bartman.
And by the way, that's been brought up, and actually a spokesman for Steve Bartman has said he's overjoyed and he's not going to be a part of it because he doesn't want to be a part of it. He doesn't want to be a sideshow. Steve, this is your moment. Come back to the fold.
Yeah.
Chicago the Chicago Cubs should somehow mention and honor Steve Bartman at this parade because it's long overdue. He wasn't the reason you lost.
No, he absolutely wasn't.
That's all a bunch of garbage, and I hope it all comes together. And the interesting thing, too, and I picked up watching this in Game 7 when they clinched it. The ratings are very similar. In fact, it's the highest-rated World Series since the 2004 World Series when the Red Sox swept the Cardinals to win their first championship since 1917 or 1918.
1918.
The White Sox were 17. So, obviously that's one of the reasons why this series has been the ratings have been so great because it was that same curse-breaking drama unfolding. But I remember after the 2004 World Series where they asked a couple of players, and specifically closer Keith Folk, who came over late in the season, maybe late in the season, maybe at the trade deadline, maybe a little before, from Oakland to the Red Sox, and he closed it out. And they're like, I remember the broadcasters trying to say, hey, the city of Boston, the curse is broken, all this kind of stuff. And he's like, I don't know about that, man. We just won the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's it. Yeah.
And then but the way the Cubs, it was a totally different tenor with them. I think this team, Rizzo, Bryant, Schwarber, they all understood that it wasn't just about this team in 2016 winning a World Series. It was about something that the city of Chicago, sorry, White Sox fans, had really been wanting for a long, long time, and they embraced that. They really, really did. It just seemed a little different along those lines.
I'm with you, and certainly every player is going to feel like this. I mean, you got a guy like Ben Zobrist who's holding up a World Series trophy last year with Kansas City and now the MVP trophy this year. Listen, I think players understand the significance, just how much it is seeped into their soul. I don't think it compares at all to the fans there, especially the great stories. Some of the stories we told yesterday, Trey, of people calling their 94-year-old grandfather or grandmother or whatever. A guy drove from North Carolina to Indianapolis and sat at his father's grave and listened to the game. I mean, it's stuff that gives you chills. So this goes so much deeper than the players on this team. Again, as I mentioned, 6 of them are 24 or younger.
Right.
So it is the fans of Chicago that I think appreciate it the most about what was accomplished.
It's great that you say that, because obviously you had a rooting interest the other way.
Yeah.
And the Indians are next up. I guess they're next on the deck in terms of drought for a World Series championship. But to that point, I kept finding myself looking at some of these YouTube clips about 90-year-old nannies and grandmothers and grandfathers and their grandkids. They're celebrating with them, and it was powerful, man.
Yeah, it was.
Because
it was.
For all the crap that sports gets, they're all overpaid prima donnas, and they're all, they're bad things, and they're using these drugs and all the bad stuff you hear. The stuff that came out of this World Series on the Cleveland side as well as the Cubs side was everything that was right about sports and everything that made you want to be a part of sports. Sports is the only thing that can bring a community together in a way with such unbelievable, unbridled joy, more than anything else you could imagine. It'll bring people that have nothing in common together, and they'll find something to absolutely be ecstatic about, or on the other side of it, be absolutely gutted about it. Some of those shots of the fans sitting in Progressive Field just trying to soak in the fact that, oh, my God, it happened again.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that. There's nothing close to sports along those lines where you will find a community somehow tied together for that one brief moment, whether it's, an hour, 2 hours, 3 days, or whatever. There is nothing. Yeah. There is literally nothing in life that can draw people together for that certain amount of time than a championship with your favorite team.
I agree, and in more ways than one, because we metered out the dates, so it'd be early in August to see how many new babies are born.
Yes,
after Wednesday night as well, and then there's that side of it. We laugh a little bit.
Meet,
and then
there's little Zobrist.
There you go. And then there's the money side of it. How about this? The Cubs championship gear, not shocking at all, setting records. The Cubs' first 24 hours of sales will approach $70 million in retail sales, which would make it, according to our Darren Ravel, the hottest post-game championship market of all time. And that is the least stunning news you could ever hear.
No, absolutely.
That they're going to set records
They
there.
want a piece of it. They want, I saw one guy, one of the YouTubes, he had a beer from 1984 that he was going to drink when they won the World Series in 84, and he kept it.
Better have a chaser.
They just opened it and poured it. Yeah, and it did not go well, so they decided not to ingest it.
But it's probably
that's
a good move.
He held on to a can of beer
since
1984 that he was going to have to celebrate, and he started to drink it, and someone was like, no, don't drink it. Just look at it. Pretend like you're drinking it.
Yeah, exactly. I tell you, if I was one of the players, first thing I'd have done is I'd have taken the ball out of Rizzo's pocket. Did you see when he caught that ball?
How smart is he?
Oh, he did it in the LCS as well.
No Doug Mankiewicz situation here. I don't know what happened to that ball. I don't know where it went.
Yeah, so that in the pig pile, I'd have grabbed that ball. Hang out of that thing.
Wouldn't be the first time you've done that in the pig pile.
Okay.
Hey-oh! Oh, that's a
wow
football scrum,
but yet true.
Also accurate. Now I have to to tell this story. I have to tell this story about there's Rizzo pocketing the ball right now if you're watching it on ESPN too. That was the first thing my eye went to.
Yeah.
But now that I went there, I have to bring up this story when my son was first playing Little League football. What we called it was the Mud Hogs.
Oh, yeah.
There.
That's where my boy started.
And they were saying you had to wear protective devices down there. And he was like, Dad, it's really uncomfortable, blah, 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 blah. And I went to you and I said, they're saying he has to wear this. What do you think? He goes, I never wore one once in your life.
Never. Players don't wear.
They just don't.
Not the way you fall all the time. There would be way too much pinching.
Correct.
That would go on.
Yeah,
and every now and then you catch a shot. Your eyes water a little bit. You become a little more of a man or a little less of a man.
First tenor.
There you go.
Yeah.
But, no, you don't wear one.
Because you were my go-to guy. It's like, I got to ask you.
No.
You're like, don't worry about it. I'm like, all right, we're all in.
No
problem.
You don't go commando either,
No. There's no Kramer, just a thin layer of gabardine. That's not what we're doing here. By the way, Fake Hembo is just cringing over there right now. He's absolutely like, I can't believe we're going down this.
That is awesome.
But you know what? That's Straight Talk.
Yeah.
Hey, it's time for Straight Talk. Brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, half the cost. So if we're talking Straight Talk and we're talking football, Richard Sherman of the Seahawks.
Yes.
Maybe one of the most interesting and intelligent players in the league. And many times I think the social conscience of the league. Something we talked about with Herm last hour, the issue of the ratings and why the NFL isn't as incredibly over-the-top good as it has been in recent years, and we talked about that a little bit last hour. Here's what Richard Sherman had to say about some of the reasons he thinks that might be the case.
The league isn't fun anymore. Every other league, you see the players have a good time. It's a game. This isn't politics. This isn't justice. This is entertainment. And they're no longer allowing the players to entertain. They're no longer allowing the players to show any kind of personality, any kind of uniqueness, any individuality, because they want to control the product. Their biggest ploy is that you don't want to be a bad influence to kids. You don't want to be a bad role model. And I can agree with that. But in the same breath, you can't say Budweiser is the official sponsor of the NFL and we're trying to influence kids. So, there's a ton of hypocrisy, but it doesn't matter because we don't control it. The most celebrated part of football used to be the violence. They don't care about player safety. I've said this several times. But they do care about paying the quarterback $20 million and him missing a season. They do care about that. So whether they get to say player safety or whatever it is, they're tired of $20 million quarterback sitting on the bench on IR for the whole season.
Listen,
I could listen to him talk about a lot of stuff.
There are some things I agree with and some things I disagree with. I do think the league cares about player safety, but the league makes it sound like it's number one on their list, and it's not.
Money is.
It could be, and you know what? When you break it down, isn't that true of just about every company out there?
Correct.
But the problem is when you try and when the perception is our number one focus is player safety, and I do think they're concerned about player safety, but when you make it sound like it's number one on the list, when it really isn't number one on the list, and by the way, that's okay, but don't make it sound that way. It can be on the list of things, try and get rules, no more, missiling, no more, head down, and I get all that, and I agree with all that because
that's fine.
All that was legal when I was playing, and I agree with that, and that should be out of the game. So there are elements to the rules they are doing for player safety because we see most of the calls against the DBs hitting the receivers. There's the fines. They do protect the quarterback. I get that. They want those guys out there. But most of those calls are against the DBs and wide receivers. So I am happy they are taking that part of it out of the game. I do believe they're concerned about player safety, but it is down the list. It's not number one on the list. And I completely agree with there's part of me that just says to the NFL a little bit at times, just back off a little bit.
Absolutely.
Just back off a little bit and don't micromanage every little thing because they do then. Now, again, this gets into reasons of why you don't watch. Is it because players aren't having fun? Well, I don't know if that's going to be a reason. Does somebody not watch because somebody can't do a dance in the end zone? I don't know if that's a reason somebody doesn't watch anymore. As I said, I think it's a culmination of a lot of things. But from the player's perspective, I can see it. I see things you just kind of shake your head at. I said it in college. I've never seen refs stare so hard at players as when they score a touchdown, like don't do anything. that brings anything to yourself, or they want to throw a flag in. And then in the NFL, where they actually had to make up a video of celebration, you can dance, but don't move your hips. Don't gyrate your hips. Don't shoot an arrow. I mean, it's just it gets to the point where it does seem like, and I don't think this is the main reason, but we're talking about a myriad of reasons. It's one of them. I mean, I think there's too much micromanagement.
I think it's a bigger reason than they maybe want to admit. Look, it's hard. This game is hard. Scoring a touchdown is not easy. It is difficult. There are people literally doing whatever they can to stop you from getting into the end zone, and they would very much like it for you to hurt when they try and stop you from getting into the end zone. It has become an incredibly rigid game that they're allowing them to play or not play, for lack of a better term. Yeah. And expression is important. He is exactly right, Richard, when he says this is entertaining.
It is. It's exactly right.
It is supposed to be entertaining. They threw a flag, and they picked it up, but they threw a flag on Emmanuel Sanders a couple weeks ago for doing a cartwheel in the end zone. And then they picked it up. Well, it wasn't with another player. It wasn't long. Who cares?
I mean, they actually broke it down.
Who cares?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Who really cares? And look, the throat slash thing I hate. It's been out of the game forever.
As I said.
But like, for example, Crabtree scored a touchdown the other day, and he wiped off his shoulder like, I'm just taking – you guys are lint on my – and they said it was a throat slash. It wasn't a throat slash. Guys, let them breathe.
Let them
breathe out there.
As I said, and even like the baseball celebrations, let them celebrate more. I mean, the days of running around the bases with your head down. I mean, celebrate some. And there's limits. Sure. I don't want it to another team. Don't celebrate what you did. Don't do it at the other team. Do it with your teammates or the fans if it's a home game. I'm all for it. You don't want props? That's fine. I get it. You don't want a guy bringing out a pen or using one of the down markers or something. I get it. But holy smokes. I mean, yeah, he is right. This is entertainment. And let them entertain. Let them. There needs to be. It seems like almost like the NCAA with their rules, and you understand it to a point. Like you got to suppress everything because if you let one thing go, then the crack opens more and more, and it bleeds into other things. So that's their thought process. And I think with
the NFL,
understand that. I'm with you. I'm with you because it is entertainment. But is that the only reason? No. Is it a reason because the players in the league don't get along? No. I mean, if I'm sitting there on Sunday as a fan watching a game. Literally, do I care if James Harrison doesn't like Roger Goodell? Does that matter to me if I'm a fan? So I don't know how much that is a reason for it. I'd really like a real poll. I mean, there's so many polls out there.
Put it up on a poll.
No.
Do it again. Put it up on a poll. Let's go. Real reasons. Put it up there.
But the bottom line is.
Hey, Kembo, get on that.
When that's been done, it's been a ton of different reasons, right?
Yeah.
It has. And I don't know what the main reason is. I don't know.
I think there's a lot of conflict, and I think there's a lot of angst whenever you talk about anything in the NFL, whether it's the players against the team, whether it's the celebration, whether it's the issues and player safety. I think there's just a lot of when you talk about it, and it used to be a lot of.
Not a lot of, hey, man,
right?
What a great game we got, man.
Let's
let
go
it all
hang out.
Let it go do your thing.
That's exactly right. I think that for a million of those little reasons, but they're all sort of tense, and they're all sort of like this. And you can't play that game this way. It is, you ever seen that video that Kenny Chesney did, The Boys Will Fall?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You have those high school coaches saying all the ridiculous things to get their kids fired up. But the one guy who's screaming at the top of his lungs, this is an emotional game.
Yeah.
You can't play it without emotion, And I want to say, dude, dial it down by like 100. But he's right. You cannot go out there like robots.
Yeah.
That is the exact opposite of how everything should be played with this game. It has to be organic. It has to be within. It has to boil up from inside your soul, and it has to explode out of every one of your fingertips.
I agree.
It seems like they're reeling that in.
I agree. So I guess at the end of it,
we're getting worked up.
But the thing is, we spout out all these reasons, and what's the answer? You know what I mean? I mean, what?
Put it on a poll. What's the answer? Put it up. Poll, what's the answer? Let's go.
What's the answer? I don't know what the answer is because there's a lot of questions as to why the ratings are down. So I don't know what the actual answer is going to be, but we certainly can find reasons for why ratings are down. But as you mentioned, it's all relative. They're down to a point where every league would still love those ratings because remember, we were comparing World Series, a great storyline World Series with the Cubs, to regular season football, and it was beating it. Now, that's something that usually hadn't happened.
Correct.
And it was doing it, but still, when you look at it, when you back up and look at it, you say, okay, they're still king in football, but it is definitely, you know what? You have to start looking around a little more and say, wait a minute, this is just slipping a little bit. We need to catch it before it slips too far.
Well, that's the thing. Look, we're raving about the World Series ratings, and they've been great. But if this is the Super Bowl rating, people are like, what the heck happened?
Oh, yeah.
So everything happens in a vacuum, and we get it. There's a million reasons. But it does make you want to just say, can't we just enjoy it a little more?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, no matter what, it's like that line from North Dallas 40. Great movie, kids. If you're under the age of 35, you should probably look
I've
it up.
said
Yeah.
It is, in my opinion, the most realistic football movie that was made. But I know the line you're going to say, and you're right.
Yeah, because the coach's name is B.A., and the player, played by Nick Nolte, I can't remember his name, but he's like, B.A., every time we say it's a game, you say it's a business. Every time we say it's a business, you say it's a game.
Right.
The bottom line, it is a business. It is a business of a game.
Right.
But it is a game.
It is a game.
It should be played with joy and passion, and that's the thing.
We have lost some of that, yes.
That has been lost in this process.
The best of Mike and Mike.
The rock star when it comes to hitting for the Chicago Cubs in the World Series, Kyle Schwarber is with us. Kyle, I have to ask, how's the pre-gaming going for the parade route right now?
Hasn't started yet for me. I just woke up, so I got to get it going here soon. Let
me ask you a quick question. Have you just woken up from the celebration from winning the World Series?
Exactly. That's it. It's a 2-day bender.
I don't blame you guys a bit. And to go back to it, I've explained to others about what you went through. I always talk about when an athlete in a team sport gets hurt, they become a lot of times a ghost. You're on your own program, your own itinerary, rehabbing, doing your own thing. A lot of times that person doesn't feel as much part of the team. So I know you've done this before, but take us through that and the rehab part of this and just the work you put in a lot of times by yourself to get yourself in position that you were to be on the World Series roster.
Well, luckily the team kept me around. I could have easily been in Arizona. And they decided to keep me around. So I was very, very grateful for that. But luckily, I had a really good physical therapist team at ATI guy. ATI is one of the fastest growing physical therapy places around. And they had a really good game plan for me. There was a lot of hard work, and there was days where you just didn't want to do it. And, I credit my teammates. They helped me out a lot during it. And, they deserve all the credit for getting me, back to playing into that World Series.
Well, listen, obviously it was a great call by them to keep you around because you led the team in hitting with going 412 in the World Series coming off that knee. And he's only 23, but a veteran move by you to make sure you get the name of the rehab center out there.
Yeah, good
Solid
job.
work on your part,
Good job.
Schwartz. Tip of the cap for you there. But I have to ask, hitting 412, was that even remotely something you were thinking about doing when you realized you were going to be able to come back and play in this postseason? What were your realistic expectations?
Man, I don't know. I didn't really think that it would be possible for me to play. And once they told me I was able to give it a shot and try to play again, it would kill me deep down inside if I didn't try. So, obviously I went down to Mesa and, I wasn't feeling the hottest coming out of Mesa, but going into the World Series, I mean, that's what you look for. The adrenaline's crazy. Pressure-packed situations. It's everything that you want to put yourself in. And baseball's a crazy game, like I said, and anything can happen.
Well, it certainly did. Kyle Schwarber with us here on Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. And listen, you hit the tar out of the ball. You did a great job. You were hitting everything to all fields. But I got to ask, in the third inning.
Yeah, since you won it, we can have some fun.
It's okay now, but you hit that single, and somewhere you're like, I think I can make this a double. And how soon after rounding the bag did you think this was a horrible idea?
Probably about as soon as I touched the bag with my right foot, I'm like, this is not a good idea. I'm like, man, I felt like Superman. I hit an infield single, then I steal second base. I'm on cloud 9, and then I hit a ball to the wall, and I got thrown out easily. I'm like, man, that puts you right back in your spot. But yeah, that obviously was not a good idea. Probably once I touched first, I'm like, well, there's no stopping.
Yeah,
it's going to take a lot to stop this body. It's going to take a lot to stop this body.
Momentum took over, and it made you go all the way to second. That was and like we said, it's something you can joke about now that you have the World Series. And one of the other big stories with you after the first game started in Cleveland was going back to Chicago, and the only way you could get the 3-4 at-bats was if you played in the field. So all of a sudden all the cameras are on. Is he shagging fly balls? What's going on? And then obviously you didn't play in those 3 games. How close were you to actually going in the field for those games?
Not very close. I mean, we sat down with the doctor on the phone, and we just tried to make the best possible decision for the team one, and for myself too. And I deep down I wanted to play, but I knew that I would hurt the team if I did. If someone hit a ball down the line, and that might be a triple. So I just wanted to be ready for a pitch hit spot at any time and go from there.
Yeah, it doesn't matter now because it's all by the wayside because you guys have won. And look, Kyle, obviously Game 7 and that moment on the field at Progressive Field in Cleveland and inside that clubhouse afterward was the moment for the team where you guys realize what you have accomplished. But this next thing that you're doing today, the parade, which is going to start at 10 o'clock Central Time in Chicago, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, that's going to be really for the fans. It's going to be a totally different dynamic. And I think a lot of the players, even as young as you all are, understood the history of the Cubs and how long it had been. What are you expecting today when you're going to see this unbelievable outpouring of just sheer joy that millions of people are going to feel because of what you guys were able to do?
Yeah, it's going to be great for the city of Chicago today. Our fans really do deserve it. I mean, obviously, it's been 108 years since something like this has been done, and it's going to be pretty much the first parade for a baseball team in this city in a long time. But I remember when I was in high school, I was driving to a baseball tournament up in Schaumburg, and I drove past the city, and it just happened to be the day that the Blackhawks won they're having their parade down the city. You could see everything and from the highway. So I'm like, man, it's going to be like that times 10. So I really can't wait to see all the fans out there. It's going to be great.
I want to let you go enjoy it. So one more quick one from us, and really congratulations on this whole experience for you. And as I said many times on this show, I'm jealous every year in my sport when the Super Bowl plays because I never got to play in it and have the chance to be a champion. You got that at 23 years old. So take us to the moment of the ground ball to Bryant when you know it's going to be basically a routine play, and that's going to end the game, and that's going to give you the World Series. Just at that moment, what your thoughts were?
I was stressed out of my mind. I'm out of the game. There's nothing that you can do to control the game. So I was stressed. I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to Lester. He's talking to himself. But ball's hit, and my first reaction was that, oh my God, it's a single. I thought it was going to be a little swing and bunt. But once he picks it up and throws it, I mean, it was just complete mayhem. No real thought process. It was just go out and celebrate. Let's get it going.
Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans proudly supports Mike and Mike. Rocket Mortgage brings the mortgage process into the 21st century. Forget about digging through stacks of paperwork. This completely online process lets you safely share your bank statements and pay stubs with a touch of a button. Using your phone or tablet, you can get approved for purchase or refinance in just a few minutes. Get a custom mortgage solution at your own pace, whenever and wherever you want. So if you're looking to refinance or buy a home, check out Rocket Mortgage today at quickenloans.com/Mikes.
Equal housing lender licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
You know, I give him grief about this almost every time, but he once had a great matchup of tape, and he said this play was designed to work. As some plays are not designed to work. Ron Jaworski was designed to work, and he joins us now on Mike and Mike. Jaws, how are you?
I am doing great. I love when you take your shots, Trey. Come on, bring it on.
Come on, Jaws. Come on, baby. How we doing? So, listen, we've been talking a lot about this morning because of obviously what's gone on Thursday night. Is Matt Ryan the MVP right now?
It's way too early, but Matt Ryan is playing at a very high level. You know, we were having this discussion last week about Matthew Stafford. There are certainly quite a few players at the midway point of the season, entering Week 9, that are playing at MVP level, and clearly Matt Ryan is one of those players. I love what they're doing offensively, the balance that they have between the run and the pass, how they use their running backs as pass receivers. So clearly all the arrows pointing up for Matt Ryan.
Why is he basically the way he's going right now? He can double his touchdown total from last year and cut his interceptions in half. I mean, which is just going to be remarkable statistically. Why is it so different this year?
Throws under pressure. Go back to last season. The offensive line did not do a good enough job protecting Matt Ryan. Clearly, Alex Mack comes in. He solidifies the interior of the offensive line, and all of a sudden, Matt Ryan looks like a rock-solid NFL quarterback again. The quarterback position is a dependent position. You depend on other people doing their job so you can excel at doing your job. Right now, the supporting cast is very good, particularly the O-line, much improved in Atlanta.
Jaws with us here on Mike and Mike in the morning. And Jaws, I love what you just said there because to me that has always been the appeal of football. You can be the best at your position, but if you don't have people around you that are adequate at their jobs, it doesn't matter. And to me, that's why football has always been my favorite sport. It's the most team-oriented sport along those lines. In the NBA, you have one or two players. You can shift the dynamic, and you have a chance to win a championship every year. Baseball, as we saw in the World Series, is really about one thing, the pitcher versus the batter. And look, obviously fielding matters. There were a couple of shots to Jason Hayward in Game 7 that were hit hard but went right to him in right field. But the thing that makes football special is what you just said. There are so many things that have to happen around you for any player to be good at his job. It is the ultimate team concept sport.
It is the consummate team game, and you neglected to mention coaches, you know, and I believe coaching is so important in the NFL, teaching in the NFL, putting players in a position to be successful, managing the game for those players, teaching technique, doing all the little things that make teams a world championship group of players. So I think clearly it is the consummate team game.
You know, another team with the arrow going up on them this year is the Oakland Raiders, and some people thought they would see that this year, and you are. And one of the big reasons is their quarterback play of what Derek Carr is doing. It's been really amazing. Now they're going to play Denver this week, so big test there with that defense. But when we talk about quarterbacks like 25 and under, he seems to be the man right now. What's working so well with him?
You know, one of the statements I make, and it's kind of it makes sense once you think about it. Derek Carr will make throws now without access to the results. And what I mean by that is, as I watch quarterbacks, some guys are afraid to pull the trigger unless they see the guy wide open or they don't anticipate. What I'm seeing now is Derek Carr willing to make those throws when there's tight coverage, trusting his receiving core to make plays, much better anticipating where the receiver is going to be long before the receiver gets there. So I think those type of anticipation throws, the confidence and trust he now has in his receiving corps. And again, back to the offensive line, like Matt Ryan in Atlanta, the offensive line is doing a tremendous job right now in Oakland. In fact, as I've tracked this offensive line, they've only given up 2 sacks. Now, Carr's been sacked more than that, but only 2 could I attribute to the offensive line out in Oakland.
And, Jaws, that sets up a really tremendous matchup tonight. And the game within the game, or the matchup within the matchup, is always so much fun. That pressure that the front seven of Denver always likes to create going up against that great offensive line from the Oakland Raiders. And speaking of great offensive lines, obviously that's a big reason why Dallas has done so well. Dak Prescott on Sunday night, for the first time, Jaws, looked like a fourth-round pick for the first 3 quarters of that game against the Eagles. He was unsteady. He was inaccurate. He was hesitant with his throws. And then, you talk about the clutch gene, and you want that guy to have that sort of understanding of the moment. And, boy, once the fourth quarter rolled around when they were 10 down, he marched him right down the field a couple of times. And then in overtime, he was like, forget it, you're not getting the ball, we're scoring. Took the Cowboys on an unbelievable touchdown drive to win that game. It was almost as if after 3 quarters of playing really pretty poorly, he decided, no, I'm going to go ahead and win this game.
Trey, that may be the defining moment for Dak Prescott's career, that fourth quarter. For 3.5 quarters, he struggled. Not only watching the game on television, when I came in and looked at the tape, the Eagles brought pressure on him. They used a lot of zone blitz schemes. They got him playing fast. They got him out of his calm demeanor, the way he was playing the game. He struggled for 3.5 quarters. That being said, as you just mentioned, with the game on the line, he was able to regain his composure. He was terrific down the stretch and in the overtime. That says a lot mentally about Dak Prescott. Not every game is going to go your way. It's going to be clean. It's going to be perfect. And yet, with the game on the line, he regained that composure. And while I'm talking about Dak, I got to mention this Cowboys offensive line and
Tremendous.
the job that Frank Pollock has done. We talk about coaching a lot and how the offensive line, I think, has been deteriorating in this league because of lack of practice time. But when I watch this Cowboys offensive line, Frank Pollock, an old, NFL lineman himself, worked under Bill Callahan down there in Dallas. I mean, they are versatile. They are well coached. They are disciplined. Their orchestration of their footwork is phenomenal as a group. I give a lot, and now we talk about this O-line a lot, but they're well coached. They're well disciplined. They know what they're doing. They work in harmony. I mean, all the good things you like to see from an offensive line is happening down in Dallas.
Jaws, joining us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, Trey Wingo in for Greeny. Trey has his lower back tattoo of the Dallas Star as well with that last question.
It's an upper chest tattoo. I want to be clear about
Can I see that?
Hey, nobody wants to see that, Jaws.
That's the most crucial thing you'll say in your entire radio career.
Hey, Jaws, Norv Turner resigns. We have now had 4 offensive coordinating changes, starting with the Bills to Baltimore to Jacksonville and now Minnesota since week 2. What gives with that?
The other 3 were fired. I have ultimate respect for what Norv Turner did. Norv Turner is one of the best coaches this league has ever seen, from a quarterback's perspective, from a coordinating an offense perspective. He's won Super Bowl championships. The guy flat out knows how to coach. And I think what he saw in Minnesota, it wasn't working. They've struggled the last 2 games. I mean, they were atrocious against Chicago and Philadelphia offensively. And here's where I have the respect for Norv Turner. A lot of these guys hang out and they get a paycheck and they say, hey, I'll do this for the rest of my life. Norv Turner said, you know what? My coaching isn't resonating with these guys. We got Sam Bradford here. We got Pat Shurmur here, who coached Sam in St. Louis with the Rams, who coached him in Philadelphia last year when he had a good year. I'm going to step aside for the good of the team and the organization. I thought it was a classy move on the part of Norv Turner, and I applaud what he did, and I have unbelievable respect for making that very difficult decision.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Ray Allen joins us now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. He's a man that knows a thing or two about championships. Ray, it's great to have you on the phone. We'll get to basketball in a minute, but the idea of the championship parade, what does this mean to guys that have won the title, and how long does the euphoria go on?
Well, good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on. I think that, it's probably one of the most special moments that you can experience as a professional athlete. That's the real time, the one time when you have a real celebration, because the actual game, when you win, it's almost like a big relief. Like you win a game and then you're sitting there and you're just like, everybody thinks you should be out celebrating, partying somewhere, like just getting blitzed, but you're actually too tired to do anything. Like, you can't go out. Like, when we won in Boston, it was like 4 a.m. We're still in the arena sitting there just thinking about everything that transpired. But the day of the parade is the day that you actually get to sit back and just revel in everything that you did as an athlete. Not even just that year, but your whole career. And just for me, it's going down that street in Boston, going down the street in Miami, both those times, it's amazing to see the people out there, just in, thousands, tens of thousands of people. It's incredible.
How different was it for you, not from the player side of it, and I'm sure a lot of these Cubs players would like to know. Ben Zobrist knows. He won World Series with the Royals last year and now with the Cubs. But for these players that want to win it a second time, you've won 2. What was the difference of the first and the second from you as a player?
Well, I'll take you back even a little bit further. When I was in Milwaukee in 2001, we went to the conference finals, Eastern Conference Finals, and we were really good, and we had the opportunity to go to the NBA Finals. We got beat by Allen Iverson-led Philadelphia team, and we just came up short. So we felt like the next year we were supposed to go back, and it took a while. Obviously, the next year I get traded. Well, within the next year I get traded, and then I end up in Seattle for a couple of years. I don't do anything significant where I make it to a finals. So now to 2008, making it all the way to the NBA Finals, I said, wow, to get back is something that is unprecedented for any player. There's no guarantee, there's no promise. Just because you did it one year, the next year is not guaranteed. So one thing I said to myself is I realize this is something that's special and that you got to cherish it, because there's no guarantees. Like, to be a dynasty is a special thing. To go multiple times is a special team, because you have minds that are lined up that are similar, from the players that you're playing with to the organization, and then obviously being in a great fan base in front of them every night.
Well, you certainly did that a couple of times. 18 seasons in the NBA, 2-time champion, multiple All-Star. Ray Allen with us here on Mike and Mike. And, for whatever you did on the basketball court, Ray, everybody will remember you for being one of the purest shooters in the game of all time. And I want to read something that Steph Curry recently had to say about you. He said, "To me, he's the greatest shooter ever because of his longevity. He did it year to year, and he got up on his shot. That's what made him different. He was a special player." When you hear someone like Steph Curry, who is considered right now to be the greatest shooter in the game, say that about you being the greatest shooter ever, what does that mean to you?
Well, it certainly is a great compliment coming from him, because right now he is the best shooter in the world. And I don't know if a lot of people know, but I played with Steph's dad, Dale. So Steph and Seth used to be in the gym in Milwaukee with us during shoot-around. So he was exposed at a young age, and he had.
So you basically taught him everything.
You taught him how to shoot. You taught him how to shoot.
It's you.
No, not at all.
That's us trying to get you in trouble. Just ignore us. Just ignore us.
And both of you jumped on it too. That's the thing. You guys are quick. Yeah. He was under expert tutelage with his dad, because I'm telling you, when I came into the NBA and I played against Del Curry, I was amazed. One game I'm playing against him in Charlotte, and I'm up on him. I'm coming from college, so if you're standing next to a guy, you're guarding him. I got to the NBA, and I realized that wasn't the case. I'm standing on Del Curry, and he's looking at me, and he looked at me, he had the ball in his hands, and he looked down at me, and oh, you're not going to put your hand up, and he shot it. And I looked at the coach, I was guarding him. He said, close is not close enough. And so I think with Steph, he just was, so fortunate to be able to be, under such a great shooter as his dad as it was. But then me growing up, I watched Dale Curry, I watched Dale Ellis, I watched Craig Hodges, I watched Reggie Miller. And these guys, to me were incredible. And so they raised me, and I think I come up in the era now where Steph watched, a lot of what I did, what Reggie did, the guys that played during my era. So, that's what kept him motivated. We set the bar for him, so now he's in the league to now raise that bar to another level. So it's great to have the argument on who the greatest shooter is, but every generation, it definitely will change.
Talking to Ray Allen on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, officially retiring from the NBA. We'll certainly get into that. You've made so many shots in your career, but, Game 6, 2013 NBA Finals, do you rank your shots? And if you do, where does that one rank?
Well, I was asked that question immediately following that game, and they're like, is this the biggest shot you ever hit in your life? And I didn't ever want to discount every other shot, because I started flashing back to all these, these great moments I had. Like, so many shots. The best shots are the ones that you have to make when your team's back is up against the wall. And several times that happened in Boston. It happened in Seattle for me a couple of times, and certainly in Milwaukee. So I was trying to go back over all those memories. And up until that point, I was like, I have to sit and think about that, because it's hard to really say from one shot, one game to the next. And now as it's, I'm removed from the whole situation, by far, I've hit some, pretty big shots in playoff situations, but I think none greater than this one in 2006, in 2013 in Game 6, because of what it meant, playing in the NBA Finals. It was elimination for us. Like, we're losing Game 6 if that shot doesn't go in. Again, we don't know what might happen after that rebound if I missed, but so many things had to work out for us to get to Game 7, and that was certainly one shot that put us over top. But I will say this, that Mike Miller that game, he hit a three with his shoe off. LeBron hit a three leading up to that shot that I made. Chris Bosh got the rebound. So I try to tell people all the time, I was like, yeah, I contributed, but we all contributed in some way, and that's what being on a great team is all about.
Well, that's a great point there, and I love the fact that you're sharing the wealth. The one thing, Ray, I'll remember about that game is, when that comeback started and it was sort of capped with that three-pointer that you made, all those Heat fans trying to get back into the stadium, not back into the arena.
Oh, yeah.
They're we want to come back in.
No re-entry.
You kept hope alive for that series, which you guys would go on to win. Now, many people may not know this about Ray Allen, but not only is he a tremendous NBA player and going to the Hall of Fame in a few years, in my opinion, but he's also an absolutely outstanding golfer. What's your number right now on the course?
Right now, I'm a scratch.
Say scratch, which means he shoots level par. He's expected to shoot level par on every course he played. Goalie, he's giving me the look because we're bringing this up. Ray, you got to back me up on this, okay? Yeah. We were trying to think the hardest things to do on a professional level in championship events. And I said, look, hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in all sports. And I said the second hardest thing would be consistently putting a golf ball where you want it. Now, as somebody that has made pressure shots in NBA situations and is now a scratch golfer, what do you say to that comparison?
Well, I'll say that, 15 years ago when I really started to fall in love with golf, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna play this many years in the NBA, and then when I retire, I'm gonna try and go on tour and play, on the PGA Tour or go on the senior tour, because I just love golf that much. Now, I'm the best I've ever been at golf, and the better I've gotten, it seems like the worse I've gotten, because you have such greater expectations, and it's the hardest game in the world, because no matter how good it was no matter how good it was to you the day before, next day you could stink. There's no consistency in it. Like I always say, golf is not like anybody. So great respect to anybody who's ever played on tour, ever won a tournament. There's no rhyme or reason. Like you see these guys on the tee box working on their swing, and you're thinking, these guys are professional. Why is he still trying to work on it? Shouldn't he know that by now? But it just, you can't figure it out, and you need somebody else to watch you. You need somebody else to help you, and it's just it's hard. I can see these guys that are married that play on tour. I can only imagine. I don't know how you get married and play golf, because golf ends up being your wife.
Yeah, and
I love you, man. I just want you to know that. I love you for saying that. I love you, Ray.
And that's a tough marriage, too, when it's golf.
Hey.
Yeah. And listen,
Yeah.
I've golfed with Ray a couple of times at Jim Calhoun's tournament, and yeah, he's a fantastic golfer, and I just try and ingest more swing juice to help my game.
Swing oil.
There you go. Hey, nothing wrong with that.
No. All right, couple other things. When you left Boston to go to Miami, there was a little bit of backlash from fans, and certainly when talking to Kevin Garnett, from players as well. You see what's going on with the whole Kevin Durant going to Golden State, and now what's back and forth with he and Westbrook haven't spoken and always asked a ton of questions. Take us into that a little bit and what they're going through, as opposed to kind of what you went through there. And a high-profile guy leaves. You had a guy who's got a championship in Boston. They were close and didn't get one in Oklahoma City. So just kind of those dynamics.
Well, the hardest thing for me when I left Boston, was leaving the fans, because I'm a New Englander. It was probably the toughest decision I've had to make in my life. But for me, the writing was on the wall inside the locker room, like the things that the direction that the team was heading in, and so when you circle the wagons, you talk to the family. It's like you got to keep moving on. And once if the team didn't make a solid commitment to me personally, when we talked about the future, and the future for us was the next 2 years. So we knew that it was time for us to leave, and we had to figure out what the best option was. And when I had my options were going to Minnesota, Memphis, or Miami. And, anybody in, their right mind knew that, in order to win a championship, I'm an older player, Miami was the suitable choice. And it was a good team, and a great locker room. So that's what helped me make my decision going forward. And I knew that it was a business. And, there's a huge contradiction that goes on in our society, in our sport, because everybody says that players should want to win championships. We want guys to be loyal to their teams. We want teams to be loyal to their players. It's a two-way street. And so quickly a team will trade a player if their value is not up to par with what they think. But at the same time, a player has to figure out where they need to be happy and where they have the best chance to win a championship. And I think there's been so much criticism of Kevin Durant. I think, rightly so. He was in Oklahoma City, and he went to a team that was already a contender, but it is his right. It's his ability to be able to go somewhere to where he thinks it could help him win a championship. And, don't like him for him, criticize him for it, but he's a man and he made a decision. And each one of us players in the league know that at some point, we've been in a situation where we've had to choose, the lesser evil, the great, whatever. Just like you guys, when contracts get put on the table, situations get thrown at you, you had to go back and ask your wife, babe, what do you think we should do? And you got to make a decision for your family. And you laugh because this is not just a you decision; it's a family decision.
We know we ain't the boss. We know we ain't the boss, right?
Yeah, and we all have to deal with that in some form or fashion. And so outside world doesn't understand it; they may not appreciate it. But we have to say to ourselves, family, let's circle the wagons and figure out what's best for us and move forward. We want to win. We want to be happy. Where do we go from here? And so the decision he made, it was his. And I'm happy for him that he's happy. And, I don't judge him because I've been in that situation. And anybody who does judge him, wait till you get put in that situation, whether you're in the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, or you're an accountant somewhere. When you get thrust in that situation, then you're going to say, I see what he dealt with. I see what it was like. So
absolutely,
don't judge a man till you walk a mile in his shoes.
Well, yeah.
And then if you get a mile in his shoes, you can say whatever you want because you're a mile away.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
By the way, Ray Allen joins us on the Shell Benzol Performance Line, and that was a performance line, by the way. Choose Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline for the best total engine protection you can get. All right, speaking of decisions, before we let you go, I have to ask you this. It took you 2 years to officially announce that you are going to retire. What took it 2 full years to decide, I'm definitely done?
Well, it was interesting because the first year I got out, I was kind of home and I was trying to figure out, if it was something that I wanted to continue to do. And then all these reports came out that I was signing with Cleveland. And then simultaneously, I had left for a day and my house got broken into in Miami. And, everybody was reporting that I had already been in Cleveland. And I was like, there were journalists in the NBA that were reporting that I had signed with Cleveland. I was like, I haven't spoken to anybody. So what I had to, it made me, I went internal because I said, I can't have a conversation with anybody because they take it the wrong way. They take it out of context. And so I had been sitting back watching, trying to figure out if it made sense for me to go anywhere. And then I didn't want to have a formal situation. I didn't want to retire and then want to come back. And that's what I thought from the beginning, because I've seen a lot of athletes do that where they retired and they still had that in them. And so I call it the honeymoon period to retirement. Like, you get there, but you're kind of not there. You want to keep going back and forth. You're trying to figure it out. And so for me, I just sat back and I waited. And I just, you know, I still work out and I was still playing basketball. And, you know, I was trying to figure if it made sense to me. And I think more than anything, what didn't make sense to me was having to move my family again. My kids they're the most important thing to me. I got 4 boys. I have an older daughter. She's just graduated from college. So with the 5 of them, I had to make sure that I made a decision for them, and I didn't want to spoil their life early. And, you know, I hadn't been gone enough. And I realized since I've been home in the last 2 years how much I haven't been home.
Right.
So I wanted to be home for them more than anything.
Was there a point in this honeymoon phase of retirement? How close were you, if at all, to actually signing with a team?
You know, I would speak with LeBron from time to time, you know, watching the games. And, you know, I had some conversations over emails with Steve Kerr. Excuse me, I was getting calls from a couple of different teams. And, you know, there was one point where everybody was like, well, if you're considering it, we're going to throw our name in the hat. So I was dealing with a lot of teams, but never did I officially, like, go out there and seek, you know, the interest of other teams. I know teams wanted me. I think this year in July, August was the first time I had really let people know, okay, I'm really thinking about this, and this is my last-ditch effort at trying to see if it could work for me. And that was my way of seeing how teams looked and if I fit in the scheme of what they were doing. I didn't want to be a player yet. Even though I'm 41, I didn't want to be a guy that came back and I would sit the bench and I was a mentor. Even though I would be that, I still wanted to play. I still felt like I could contribute, and I didn't want to feel like I went back somewhere and I just went back to, you know, endure sitting on the bench. And, you know, I'm a great cheerleader and I'm a, you know, great team guy, making sure these young guys get better. But I still wanted to contribute. And if I didn't want to feel like I went back and I wasn't able to do that, and then I would have kind of felt like I was not, you know, using myself the right way. So, you know, I'm over here sitting on the couch thinking about, you know, playing more golf and doing a little more traveling.
I'm Andy Katz from ESPN, along with my co-host Seth Greenberg. On the latest edition of the ESPN College Basketball Podcast, we are going to discuss the notice of allegations at Louisville and Seth Greenberg on a tour around the country. Go to the ESPN app and click on the headphone icon to get our podcast.
Field Yates is here, but before we go any further, to continue my quest to have energy, I'm having a little sip of Chair Bundy.
Oh, I thought you were going to bring us some sometime.
You bet. Yeah, sure, you're going to get some.
Oh, that'd be
wonderfully
great.
delicious and good for you.
But he doesn't share.
Chair Bundy for everybody on the staff.
We did not share.
You're right. You're right. You know what? Last time I got donuts. Next time I'll bring in Chair Bundy.
You got donuts because you were late, and that was a makeup gift.
That's also true.
Do something.
I need
nice.
to be. I'll be nice.
Okay.
And I couldn't do anything nicer than bringing you all a lot of Chair Bundy.
Oh boy!
Just want you to know that. Mm-hmm. All right. So Field is here. You're always dapper. And
Thanks,
Field Yates is our player with style this week. Brought to you by JCPenney. Hurry into JCPenney's Lucky Day sale with great deals for just $7. Plus, get $10 off when you spend $25 or more with a coupon. That's getting your pennies worth, JCPenney.
He's looking nice.
He always looks
I thought that was like a genuine comment until I realized it was just a segue into that live read
Pretty
for
much.
JCPenney.
Well, exactly.
Whatever works.
Yep. Listen, let me explain the show to you. There are billboards and sales pitches, and then there are this much sports.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the way it works.
Got it.
And
We
that's
fit in the sports around the reads.
That's why we can employ 73 people around
There
the
you
studio,
go.
and we have no idea what they are.
There you go.
Or what they do.
Okay.
They just sort of show up. And
They're all
we got
they're all
fake
very
hembo
nice.
over there. We don't have a real. We have a real hembo. We got fembo, fake hembo over there. It's a little depressing. I'm not going to lie to you. All right. By the way, I've come up with a brilliant segment that we need to incorporate into our NFL coverage.
Trademark it now.
It struck me the other day. We have Matthew Berry on to do his love-hate on NFL Live
right.
Fantasy. I'm like, why don't we have a Matthew Berry Field segment and call it Love Yate? Right? How great would that be? The player that Matthew loves and the player that Field Yates.
All right, stop thinking so much.
No, I think it's genius.
Well, it's been a solid rock bed of your career.
What, thinking?
Not thinking.
That's exactly right.
I can't.
You know how you make it 17 years? Don't think so much.
Come on, time for Matt and Field with Love Yate. How great is that?
I think it's perfect.
It's happening. Executives, it's happening. We're just going to make it happen.
Oh, God.
We're going to actually let this happen. All right, time for recess.
There you go.
You guys
Do
ready?
it. Love recess.
Like the first 2.5 hours haven't been recessed.
Exactly right. Big fan of
this
recess.
This is recess times 2. All right, Dallas at Cleveland. Field, we start with you. What happens first? We see Tony Romo play this season or the Browns win?
I think we see the Browns win a game.
Where?
I don't know.
Okay, come on.
Here we go.
Right away, that's bad.
They have squandered their...
I'm not asking you to pick a team, but I'll just give you the rest of the Browns. Dallas, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, the Giants, the Bengals, the Bills, Chargers, Pittsburgh.
It won't be easy. It won't be easy. I could see them beating Baltimore, who they took to the limit back in week 2, I believe it was. They were up 20-0 early on in that game. The bigger issue is, Trey, that I just don't see Tony Romo getting back as the starter for the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys aren't going to fade, and if you're that team, whether it's Jerry Jones is making the call or Jason Garrett or a combination of several members of that organization, how could you possibly move away from Dak Prescott?
I think you could ask the question this way: what happens? The Browns win a game, Tony Romo doesn't start anymore, or both. The Browns go 0-16, and Tony Romo doesn't play the rest of the year.
Secret option C is always a good one.
I wonder if that's the highest percentage. But for this question, I say the Browns win because I don't think Tony Romo gets back in either. As long as Dak keeps playing, again, he's not going to have that 4,000 to 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. But what he's doing is good enough with that offensive line, and what Zeke is doing. The O-line, I think, is really the MVP of that team right now. But so I'd say the Browns. I think it's difficult to lose all your games.
And just so people understand, we're bringing up that question. Dallas is in Cleveland this Sunday. And by the way, per our friends at the Westgate Sportsbook, they are favored by 7 on the road. That is
difficult to do.
That's a big number. Although, this is a 100% injury league, so there may be a chance that, as big as he is and as strong as a bull that he's named after, Rain Dakota Prescott, the Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa. That's the guy he's named after.
Oh, there you go.
There could be an injury, and that might be the way Tony Romo gets in because that's the way he lost the job to begin with. All right, so that's one. This next question. Detroit is at Minnesota. The Vikings were the last unbeaten team, but they've lost 2 straight. Which is more likely at this point? The Vikings win a playoff game or miss the postseason?
I'll go with the Vikings winning the playoff game, and one of the reasons why is if you look at the other teams in the NFC that we consider playoff caliber teams, Arizona, for example, they have really had a slow start to this season. The NFC South, it's basically Atlanta's at this point. Carolina's 2-5. New Orleans has a chance to go to 4-4 after this week with the win over San Francisco. But there's not a ton of depth at the very top of the NFC.
Agreed.
It's gonna and the NFC East, it's going to kind of cannibalize each other, right? You're going to have Washington beating New York in a week, and then Dallas beating Philly, et cetera. Like last week, there may be one wild card team from the NFC East, but there won't be 2. I think Minnesota ends up making the playoffs.
I agree. I think the Vikings can make the playoffs. I mean, they've got work to do, and you only have X amount of players to do it. As they say, you can't go buy a new offensive line down the street. They're hurting there big time. They're a team like Denver last year. Their defense has to be great 90% of the time. And Minnesota's defense slipped some, and that can't happen. They don't have an offense to overcome if the defense doesn't play well. And they gave up a lot of yards to a not very good Chicago offense, so that was worrisome right there. But I agree with you about the depth there in the NFC, so I would say Minnesota makes postseason.
Yeah, just look at the divisions, okay? You have to assume that no matter who, you're getting one team out of the South and one team out of the West because there's only one team in each one of those divisions right now with a winning record.
Right.
So the other two wild cards are probably going to come from the East or the North, and it could be the Lions, it could be the Vikings, it could be the Giants or the Eagles, or maybe even the Redskins. I mean, everybody in the NFC East is over 500.
Yep.
So the fact that there are 2 divisions where you're probably only getting one would lead credence to the idea that Minnesota has a really solid chance to get back into the postseason. I'm calling an audible here. We're going to do this game, but I'm going to change the question.
I like that.
Okay, you like this?
You do it.
My script upside down.
You host NFL Live.
Come on. We are mixing it up.
Yep.
It is Pittsburgh at Baltimore. What's more likely, that Ben Roethlisberger will play or the Steelers will find a way to win without him?
Ben Roethlisberger will play. That's where I'm leaning towards right now. And every time there's a Ben Roethlisberger timeline for an injury, and I'm not trying to undercut reports that come out there because they're from well-sourced individuals. Sometimes it's even the team itself announcing Ben Roethlisberger's timeline.
Or Ben telling you just how much he's hurt.
It almost just makes you sort of just say to yourself, cut it in half, right? 3 weeks, well, or make it a week. 4 weeks, make it 2 weeks. I think Ben Roethlisberger plays this Sunday. I wouldn't listen. I would not begrudge him.
20
if
days, by the way, since surgery. 20 days.
Yep. But it felt like this. Well, always, as we say, always easy to talk about someone else's surgery when it's not your own. Minor surgery, etc. But it felt like this was a less invasive surgery for Ben Roethlisberger than ones he's had in the past. I think Ben Roethlisberger plays on Sunday.
I would agree that he comes back. Other than the win, that defense is struggling.
Yeah, they need a
struggling mightily.
They need points,
so they really do. And you're getting points with Ben's out there at the quarterback position. Tough without him. So I think that's the way it would go.
By the way, you know how Ben is always able to come back from injury so quickly?
Oh no.
He drinks Cherubundi.
We had this on record or no?
Yes, it helps recover. Go to the website. Over 100 college and pro football teams use it.
And just
by the way, do it.
Okay.
You'll feel better.
Okay.
By the way, as a fantasy play, if Ben comes back, because you're a big fantasy guy, what are the odds that he's a good fantasy play?
Listen, if he plays, you're probably starting him because otherwise you're getting by with someone. A guy that you picked up on waivers, maybe it would be, I was going to say Jameis Winston, which would have been a reasonable play last night. Right. I think the more likely scenario is that you added Ben Roethlisberger and you're choosing between him, or you had Ben Roethlisberger and you're choosing between him and some other quarterback. There's so many guys on bye this week that there are not that many great options. But, like whether it was in a normal week like a Jay Cutler or Kirk Cousins or someone that maybe wasn't a consensus top 10 fantasy quarterback going into the season. If Ben Roethlisberger plays, I'm playing him.
Mike and Mike on ESPN and ESPN Radio and ESPN2 presented by Progressive Insurance as we continue recess with Field Yates. We got one more, and I'm doing another audible here.
All right.
It's Denver at Oakland. Which will be the matchup that wins this game? Will it be the Raiders' offensive line, or will it be the Broncos' defensive line?
I think the Broncos' defensive line.
Hey, see?
Nice one.
There you go.
Broncos' defensive line. Now, the Raiders have allowed 9 sacks this season. That's the fewest in the NFL. They've got 5 mountains playing offensive line in front of Derek Carr, and they've really held up well in pass protection, obviously. The running game hasn't been quite as consistent for Oakland, but Carr has had time and space, and that dude throws needles. He's been absolutely brilliant so far this season. But that Denver defense, they have layers and layers of depth, and they get you from all angles. They always say the quickest, the quickest line from the to the quarterback is right up the gut, and the Broncos bring pressure, the A-gaps,
everywhere
on the edges, you name it. They've even got second and third level defenders that can rush the passer well.
It's that old line that they have built in Oakland,
really good, really good.
5th in the league in rushing, even though it hasn't been great lately, but they're still there. And what Derek Carr is doing, man, that's a tough one. But as a former defensive guy, I think I'll lean toward the defense and what Von Miller can bring from the edge and the rest up the middle. But that is going to be one heck of a matchup.
It's interesting that you say that now because nobody throws on the Broncos. They just don't. Even without Aqib Talib, Phillip Rivers still had the most passing yards. It was like 260-something. So you're just not going to get a lot of throws through the air and a lot of games through the air against the Broncos, but they are susceptible to the run. And that may be the way that Derek Carr and company try to attack this defense. Without Trevathan and Malik Jackson there this year, they're not the same run-stopping defense they were in that record-setting defense they had in 2015 that ended up with that unbelievable win in Super Bowl 50.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Joining us in studio is Joey Galloway. How are you, Joe?
What's going on, guys?
Good to have you here. And again, in a half hour, we'll be talking to Kyle Schwarber from the Chicago Cubs as they get ready to have their parade this morning in Chicago.
Why did you not finish It's good to have you here before you went right into Kyle Schwarber? You didn't finish my bringing me in.
We're going to talk to you for 20 minutes. I just wanted to throw that out there. We'll talk to him in a half hour.
I think you should be insulted.
I think you kind of cut my hello a little short.
I did?
I think you did. I think he did.
Wow, you feel.
And I backed you last time I was here on that color thing that you were, the crayon.
The crayon.
The crayon.
Thank you.
Thing.
Crayon.
Yeah.
Crayon. Not crayons. Crayons.
I feel like.
Yeah. I apologize.
Okay, good.
Wow. Hold on. That may have never happened before in the history of the show. Holy moly.
Well, here's the reason I haven't apologized to you, but I'll apologize to Joey. I respect Joey.
There you go.
Very
makes
much
all the sense in the world, actually.
That. Yeah. So Joey Galloway now joins us here on Mike and Mike. It is great to have you.
Hey, but who's coming up in 30 minutes?
I don't know. I haven't looked at the rundown just yet, so I'm not really sure.
No, it will be Kyle Schwarber joining us, or is it going to actually be Kyle Schwarber or some semblance of Kyle Schwarber that might be joining, depending on where he is in his mood. Like,
how great's it gotta be getting ready to ride in a parade like that?
I can't even imagine.
Oh my gosh!
Does it bother you that you can't even imagine?
Yes.
Yeah, see,
yes,
that's what he's getting at,
me
right?
too.
Yeah.
Man, every Super Bowl that happens every year, I'm jealous of those two teams.
Absolutely.
That somebody is going to be holding the trophy and getting a parade. It's horrible.
Yeah, so he'll join us in a little bit. By the way, ESPN 1000 in Chicago, great people, great station out there. They will carry the parade, the speeches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But really, this is the day in Chicago to just don't even pretend to work. Don't even pretend like I'm going to go be productive. I'm going to make that sales call. I'm going to be in that boardroom. I'm going to have that meeting. None of that's happening today. Literally, it should be a citywide holiday. There should be no school.
Oh, it's exactly right.
If any kid gets in trouble for not being in school on Friday, that's a bad teacher.
I even go back
it's
to
a bad teacher.
Everybody knew Game 7 was on Wednesday, right? It was going to be a Game 7. That there was actually, we got tweets from parents who said their kids on Thursday morning in Chicago, a couple of them had like 2 tests. I mean, who does that?
That's cruel people.
And it's not just
cruel
Chicago,
people.
On my flight here yesterday, in the airports, I was in Columbus and in Washington, D.C., all I could hear is Cubs stories. Everybody's telling a Cubs story of what they were doing.
Yep.
And I'm just like, it was a great game. I'm not a Cubs fan. Unfortunately, I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan.
Right.
We were singing at home. But I had to hear it all the way here. It's not just Chicago. This thing
it's a national story.
It is.
It is national.
Yeah. That's why the
and all these Cubs
fans
fans are coming out of the woodwork.
Well, it's funny you say that, too. When the Seahawks won their first Super Bowl over the Broncos a couple years ago, I had never seen more Seahawk hats in my life. I'm not saying they weren't always Seahawks fans, but I never saw them wearing any of the Seahawk paraphernalia, and suddenly it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And the Cubs are like that, too. By the way, you brought up the Pirates. The Cubs are the first team since the 1979
Right.
We Are Family Pittsburgh Pirates to be down 3-1 and win the final 2 games.
Win 6-7
games,
on
game
the
6-7
road.
on the road.
Yep.
So that was impressive.
Yep.
I love that team, by the way. The 79 Pirates, Pop
absolutely.
Stargell, Bill Matlock, everybody on that team. Omar Moreno was on that team. They were great. Kent Tekulve.
Do you know why most of the most of the starters on that Cubs team have no clue about that because they're only 24 years old or younger?
Yeah.
Just a bunch of kids.
It's crazy how good they could be going forward. So, anyway, that's that. We'll have Schwarber coming up a little later on. But, again, Joey's here, and it's time to talk a little college football. Let's start with the rankings. Washington out of the picture right now at number 5. That to you, Joey, says what?
Washington is fine. And everyone looks at the rankings and say they're at number 5. I always look around, like, what's around them. So they're sitting at 5 with Texas A&M and Alabama in the top 4. One of those teams is coming out. The SEC champion is getting in. The other SEC team is getting out. If you look behind them, there's Ohio State. Ohio State and Michigan are in there. One of those teams will be eliminated. One Big Ten team is getting in, and those two play each other. So if I'm Washington, Louisville doesn't. I can't see a path for Louisville to get there because they just don't have a signature win coming up. So if I'm Washington, I feel really comfortable being number 5. First ranking doesn't matter.
I could not agree more, 1,000%. And actually, you talk about these young men, 18 to 22, who can get that testosterone built up. What a great chance to be frenzied now into. We know, just what we said, if they keep winning and they're going to be in, but for their coach to say, look at this, the committee doesn't respect you, and they can throw all that stuff out there to get these kids in a fever pitch to go play, when in actuality, just take care of business and you're in. To me, the biggest question, Joey, comes about if Washington loses a game and then still wins the championship. Does that open the door for, and I think the only non-conference winning team that has a chance in the Big Ten. I think either an Ohio State, or that would mean Ohio State beating Michigan, giving them both a loss, and then one of them going on to win the Big Ten championship and the other only having that one loss. Could they possibly get in over a one-loss Pac-12 championship team?
I guess my problem is coming from when we're asking not just 2 teams from one conference, but 2 teams from one division of one conference.
Right.
So now we're talking about Ohio State and Michigan are in the same conference, in the same division of the Big Ten. So one of those teams will be sitting at home on the weekend when 2 teams are playing for that conference championship. So you look at Alabama A&M, same difference.
Yep.
One team is sitting at home while the other team is playing for the the conference championship.
Right.
So you're going backwards to grab a team
that
didn't even get to that. That one is tough for me at this point.
I agree.
To accept, but I fear that it could happen. And you're absolutely right. If Washington drops a game, which I mean, they've looked as good as anybody in the country.
They absolutely have. Everybody just keeps assuming, they're going to lose one. I don't know.
They're not operating under that assumption. They're solid.
I have more confidence in Washington running the table than I do in any other team in the country, including Alabama, to run the table. Because Alabama's path with LSU and Auburn on it isn't all that clean. Washington should do it.
Well, they got the big one coming up. Alabama does this weekend against LSU in Baton Rouge, and obviously, Leonard Fournette is healthy and he looks like he's good, but he had a real tough time last year against Alabama's defense, and this Alabama defense might be a lot better than the defense that Alabama threw at Leonard Fournette a year ago.
They couldn't throw the ball at all. They couldn't do anything in the pass game. And when you're talking football and you only have one pitch, a good defense will shut you down.
Right.
This year, and I don't want to get carried away, but I am as excited about Danny Etling and their passing game now because they were so bad before that they've improved. Now, they're not by any stretch a great passing team, but at least you have to cover their pass game. You have to.
It has to be accounted for.
Yeah, exactly. Now you got to account for it. Yeah. So if they can at least, they don't have to be great, but they have to be able to threaten Alabama's defense with their pass game, which I think they can, then at least it gives them a second pitch that Nick Saban and Alabama had to worry about. So they have a chance. I was almost leaning toward picking LSU to win this
Really?
game.
Yeah, I can't go that far. I agree with you about the chance. I mean, their passing game was so disrespected and non-existent that you just, load up to constrict Fournette. But so I do agree it opens up a little more. Joey, this Alabama team just slowly just compresses you and just takes charge. And even though this offense has opened up, I still don't know if it's enough of an offense to do enough to this defense to win.
You got to keep the defense and the special teams out of the end zone.
Yeah,
that sounds simple, but not when you're playing Alabama.
Make their offense beat you one time. Make Jalen Hurts beat you with his arm.
That's it right there. Make Jalen Hurts beat you, not with his legs. Exactly.
No.
Well, the other thing there is that they looked a little human for a while against A&M, and then they were like, no, we're good. And they just steamrolled. So we're talking about this game between LSU and Alabama, and the Game Day Chevy Silverado is headed to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Mike and Mike's Game Day Picks brought to you by Chevy Silverado, dependably getting game day to game day. So let's pick that game. What do we think? You said you're leaning towards possibly taking LSU. Alabama at LSU. Who do you got?
I want to say LSU.
Do it. Be that guy.
I can't do it. I got Alabama.
Yeah.
I really want to.
Bringing us this close.
I want to.
Bringing us this
he
close.
did. He brought us. He brought us to the edge there, and almost did it.
I want to. I need a couple more games of Danny Etling to feel comfortable.
I'm with you. I just can't see it. I do agree their offense has opened up more, but I don't think enough to beat this Alabama.
All right, look, if they pull the upset. I know it would be an upset. If they pull the upset,
sure it will.
We'll make sure you come back. We'll have.
Can I get half credit?
You wanted to. You'll get half credit. You'll get half credit.
What an atmosphere!
Oh, it's going to be.
That's going to be though.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, it'll be good atmosphere with me back here in the studio with Danny Cannell too. That'll be.
Yeah, that'll be the atmosphere.
Well,
you dealing with.
Well, dealing with Danny is never that outstanding.
You get dealt the bad hand. Every
that's danger pay.
15 hours.
That's danger pay.
It really is.
The other one, Nebraska at Ohio State. That's the primetime game, 8:00 on ABC.
Ohio State. Favored by 17? I mean, we talked about this last week, Joey. Nebraska had their chance.
Yep.
They had the 2-game swing with Wisconsin and then with Ohio State to kind of make their presence known, and that ended last week in overtime for them. So you just wonder the air that got taken out of them with that.
We'll see what Tommy Armstrong Jr. is made of. Not a great passing quarterback, a great athlete. If he can limit, or if they can limit, the amount of times he has to beat Ohio State with his arm, as in keep it in 3rd and 4-ish area where he could run the ball as opposed to pass, then Nebraska has a chance in this game. I think Ohio State wins it, but I think it'll be closer than 17. I don't think.
I do too. I thought that number.
Big spread.
I thought that number was a
spread.
little bit. I know we're going to bring Herbie in, but one other real quick one we can ask Herbie as well. Wisconsin, this Northwestern team has been, kind of. It's one of those teams you're saying, man, you don't need to get dumped by them, and now Wisconsin's going to play them, and there are more than a few people that think that Northwestern can pull it off.
I don't think they will win, but Northwestern, what they did last week against Ohio State was they did a nice job on 3rd down of staying on the field. And it's almost like you got to the end, especially the first half, and it was Ohio State had like 3 or 4 possessions because Northwestern did a good job of staying on the field. And the importance on 3rd down, I think that gets overlooked a lot, but the importance on 3rd down of if you can extend your drive and just stay out there a little longer, what it does to the other team, what it does to the other team's defense, the morale, and it keeps the offense on the sideline. You can stay in a game just if you are good on third down.
Yeah, just extend the game. The longer you're in the game, the crowd becomes less and less a part of it, and it really changes the dynamic. Okay, you're with us here in studio, but Kirk Herbstreit joins us now on the Pennzoil Progressive Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Kirk Herbstreit is brought to you by Allstate, proud sponsors of college football. It's good to be in good hands. And Herbie, obviously we're talking a lot about the rankings here as we welcome you into the show. And we talked a little bit about this with Joey and Washington and their ability to sort of flop into that top four depending on what happens with Texas A&M and some of these other teams in that top four. But in your opinion, Herbie, what do the rankings say about the committee's interpretation of each of the conferences right now?
Well, I think it says a lot about the respect they have for what A&M has done in contrast to Washington and the Pac-12, and especially Washington's non-conference with Portland State and Idaho and Rutgers. I just think it's a first rankings reflection of kind of where things are as we sit right now. Washington fans are probably panicking, and I think in my opinion, there's no need for that. History shows us in 2014, this system is really built for all the data to be put into it, and then you can pull out the four based on, if you're a conference champion or what your overall schedule is, those kind of things. So I think right now, if you really go back and dive through it, I think it's understandable why they have A&M, despite the one loss to Alabama, why they might be up there ahead of Washington. But again, if everybody wins out, in my opinion, Washington ends up in the top four.
Oh,
By the way, I don't think they will win out. But I'm saying if they do, then I think they would be in.
Yeah, I completely agree. If they win out, I do think they have a good chance to win out. We will see. That's why they play. And let me ask both of you, and Joey, I'll start with you. If you guys were in that committee room every week, so what in your mind, to you, Joey, and then to you, Herbie, what's your criteria? You're human beings. They can give you all the lists they want, but you're still making your decisions. What's your top couple of criteria that you look at for ranking?
I would probably be voted out of the room because I'm honest. They would probably get me out because I am stubbornly stuck on wins and losses. And losses.
Well, those should matter. As Herm said, that's why you play the game.
Yeah, I agree. But now with this system, and just like Herb was mentioning, the wins, losses, and the quality opponents, A&M having a loss would matter to me more than beating UCLA or beating Tennessee or or beating Auburn early on. The wins and losses, they just stick with me, and that would be the first thing. And I would be so heavily stuck on that I think somebody would eventually try to kick me out of the room.
Herbie, how about you?
Well, first I would kick Joey out of the room.
Wow, Buckeye on Buckeye. What's going on?
Yeah. No, I look at it a little bit differently. I think when you watch all these teams from the Pac-12 all the way over to the ACC and in between, I think different teams are challenged differently because of what they face week in and week out. And playing on the road, let's say 3 or 4 of your tough teams are up in the top 15 or top 25 on the road, and you stumble in one of those versus a team that maybe plays one team that's ranked the entire year, and they play them at home. So I don't think it's fair to just look at their wins and losses. I think you have to look at the circumstances. That's why I'm always hopeful that beyond the metrics that the committee uses, that these folks are actually watching the games weekly, because you can, in my opinion, you can get some great kind of a vibe for a feel of a team based on how they're playing. Like Ohio State last year was a great example. They had all that NFL talent, but if you were watching Ohio State all year, it was like I always say they were stuck in like second or third gear.
Exactly.
They just were sleepwalking because they didn't respect who they were playing, and it wasn't, they didn't feel threatened. So they just kind of did what they had to do, and then it finally blew up on them when they lost to Michigan State. And then they showed up in a bad mood against Michigan and Notre Dame, and they looked like the team everybody was waiting to see. See, to me, if we're splitting hairs, you should be penalized for that. That's beyond metrics. That's beyond – you have to watch them to understand that. And so hopefully the folks in the room, I know they're caught up in a lot of the measurables, but I think just watching these teams play, you can really get a feel for who, at the end of the day, the best four teams are, because that's what it's about, best four. It's not about, well, we can't have two from one conference, or they didn't make their own conference championship game. It's who, when the dust settles, who are the best four teams, regardless of all the rest of that stuff. That's who we want in the playoffs at the end of the year.
Well, you're certainly hoping guys that are, or people that are watching, are making this process and deciding it, are absolutely watching the games at a minimum. That's what you should be doing. Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, like our good friend Kirk Herbstreit is right now. And Kirk, we were just talking about this with Joey before you jumped on. He wanted to go there and think that LSU was going to take down Alabama. Let's assume, just for the sake of this discussion, that happens. If Alabama were to lose, what would that do, in your opinion, to where they would be in the rankings when they come out next week?
Trey, you can appreciate this. Let me tell you just a quick story before I answer your question, because I'm sitting here thinking about listening to Joey on this radio show. There was a time when Joseph Scott Galloway was a first-round draft pick out of Ohio State. I was doing local radio. Golick, you can appreciate a guy trying to bang around doing local radio. I used to beg Joey in the off-season, come down to the studio. Come on down. Do a couple hours of radio. It'll be great. We'll talk about Reds baseball. You can make fun of me about the Reds. We'll talk about this. He just would be like, man, I'm not coming down there. He would begrudgingly come down. He would come down. Nobody was paying him, which for Joey is a big deal to leave his house if nobody's paying. So he would come down. And
wow. The bus just backed up again.
Time. He would have a great time making fun of me. And so he'd have fun when he came down, talking NHL hockey. We were breaking it down. I swear, I did that show for 15 years. And if people were listening, live in Columbus, Ohio, they would know Joey would come down and have a great time. And now here he is. I'm seeing him on TV. You look great today, Joe. He's sitting there on the set, doing radio, how about his career after his NFL career? He's crushing it on ESPN, and it all goes back to me pulling him by his ear, making him do those radio hits. So, Joseph, I'm very proud of you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. It was quite honest. He used to bring me down because it would give him the day off. He would start some controversial conversation, and he would sit back and just kick his feet up and laugh as everybody's calling in to argue with me. That's
local radio.
Well, yeah, it was like an off day for him. Basically,
to your point, you realize what he just did right there.
Yeah,
he pivoted.
He did.
Yeah, absolutely.
You should run a campaign right now, Herbie.
Question.
You did the great pivot. Well, I'll answer that question in a minute, but first let's talk about my friend Joseph Scott Galloway.
No
he went full name,
He's
by
been
the way.
doing it since
when
the
you
beginning.
go full middle name, you know you're really trying to make a point here. Answer the question, Herbie. What happens to Bama if they lose?
If they lose, they still have Auburn to play. They're still in a position where, depending on what happens with Texas A&M and Auburn in that game, they still could be okay. The SEC West, because of LSU's slow start, LSU is going to need help with Auburn losing a game because they've already lost to Auburn. So I don't think Bama comes into this game where they've won 5 in a row and they've consistently played really well in Baton Rouge, and they're thinking, you know what, we're playing with house money. If we lose, we're still going to be in a good spot. But I personally think if they lose, depending on how the game goes, if it's competitive and they lose a close one, I still think they're in position to still be able to get ultimately to Atlanta and get into the SEC championship game and into the playoff. But I don't think that's their goal. I think they're thinking about Leonard Fournette and stopping him. Remember last year, 19 carries, 31 yards. Leonard Fournette, I'm sure, is the most motivated college football player in the nation to try to avenge last year's performance in Tuscaloosa.
Never does a running back want to see a quarterback complete the ball down the field.
Right.
To back up.
Give me a chance. Give me a chance.
Number 1 ranked Alabama heads to Death Valley for a huge SEC showdown against LSU.
Snap, fumble, Alabama's got the football.
Coverage begins Saturday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.